Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Pena, and I am a director of membership for the GCLS, as some of you may know. And I want to welcome you to the GCLS members only online book club for the month of February. Ah, the month of love, everybody. That's what we're here for. So tonight is an extra special treat for us as we have two Goldie Award-winning authors that we are featuring tonight. So you may have heard of them, I don't know. But we have Georgia Beers here, and we have Melissa Brayden. Oh,
Supportive.
Georgia will be talking about and reading from her book, One Walk in Winter. And Melissa will be doing the same for her book, Back to September. Yay, and I'm so excited. Yeah, that was a nice drive-by there.
Thank you. Yeah, product placement.
Before I have here we go. All right, but first, I do want to go over a few house rules for everyone, just so that everyone will know what to expect and to help things, to keep things running smoothly. So first, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with all of the attendees on mute, all of the audience members, and that'll help minimize some of the background noise. You may hear a cat or two on my end. I'm sorry, I'm gonna apologize right now. Okay.
I'll let you know that too.
We got a dog and a toddler over here, so.
Oh, there we go. So it's all on us.
Yeah.
So I'll start us off with proper introductions of Georgia and Melissa, and they'll both read an excerpt of their books just to get us started. And the reason we're doing that is that this will give them both the ability to hear questions from everyone, or everyone can ask questions of them. And let's see, because we don't want to leave either of them waiting in the wings. And we all want to hear from them right here, right now. See what I did there?
Very clever.
Oh gosh. So once the readings are done, I'll then start us off with some questions of these lovely ladies to get us started, and we'll go from there. So then, just to let you know, in the background, as part of the audience, some members of our book club committee will be in the background. They'll be helping me field questions so that we can keep things on track. I do want to send a big thank you in advance to all of them, and also to Joy Van Stralen, who is handling all of the video and the tech for us, because you don't want me doing it, believe me. I would have had like Melissa's head cut off or something. I don't know, somehow. All right, but this event is not a one-sided interview. We hope you all will ask questions and interact with Georgia and Melissa. You can either click on, there's a little hand icon, I believe somewhere on your screen, where you can kind of quote unquote raise your hand to ask a verbal question, or you can use the chat function in this meeting app, as long as you have the whole audience or everyone designated for the question. I wouldn't want you to just direct your question to Melissa or Georgia in the chat function, because we need to kind of, like I said, just check all the, not check the questions, but just we want to avoid repeats for the sake of time. And then finally, as I often like to point out, emergency exits are, and restrooms are located somewhere in your homes, coffee shops, wherever you may be at this time. Now on to the fun stuff. Please allow me to formally introduce our guests. So Georgia Beers is the award-winning author of nearly 30 lesbian romance novels. She's not an overachiever at all. She resides in upstate New York with her dog, a wide array of plants, and at least the desire to learn how to cook.
I try.
Yeah. When not writing, she searches Netflix for a good scary movie, explores the world of wine and cocktails, and dutifully participates in spin class. Better than me. She is currently hard at work on her next book. You can visit her and find out more at www.georgiabeers.com. Yay, Georgia! Okay.
Maria, is wine allowed?
Wine. Wine is allowed. You see,
Okay, good.
I can't, I'm trying to, between red and white, I have to pick a pick. So
I have a little wine.
there we go.
Miniature.
Okay. So, so people at home, please feel free to have the beverage of your choice. It was between that and hot chocolate for me. So, moving on to Melissa Brayden. She is the multi-award-winning author of 17 contemporary romance novels and enjoying the ride. She is a dedicated storyteller, having studied with the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford upon Avon, as well as Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London. Though writing romance is her full-time job, much of that time is spent on coffee, wine, donuts, and staring off into space. Kissing scenes remain her favorite. Well, thank you both for joining us. Georgia, I know that we've already learned that you're tuning in from upstate New York. And I think, Melissa, you are tuning in from the great state of Texas. Is that right?
I'm in San Antonio, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Fun fact, so I was actually born in New York, and I actually grew up in Texas and went to elementary school there. So I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
having to do Texas history back in school, and I was a little mortified about learning about the Alamo and the Battle of Alamo. It was
Yeah.
it was not fun to learn about. But I digress. We are not here to talk about me. You may want to, I know, fight it. We are here to talk about the two of you. So without further delay, Georgia and Melissa, I know you each prepared a reading about a reading from your books. So if I can start with you, Georgia, do you mind just starting by telling us briefly about the book? There may be some who may not have yet had a chance to finish it yet. So we just want to maybe give a little bit about the book, and then we can go into your reading.
I can do that. I'll tell you a little about the book, and then I'll give you a little bit of background about the scene that I'm going to read. The book is called One Walk in Winter. It takes place in the Adirondacks, and it is about it takes place around a resort, a ski resort in the Adirondacks, small, the smaller arm of a larger corporation of resorts. The main characters are Olivia and Haley. Olivia has been working for the resort for years, since she was in high school, is the assistant manager and is ready to take over the position of manager. Her manager has left. Little does she know that that job is not going to be given to her. It's going to go to Haley, who she meets in the woods early on and has an instant connection to. It's not a spoiler to tell you that, they end up
We're all often walking out in the
together
woods.
and not getting along, and then sparks fly and sexual tension and all that good stuff. I'm going to read a scene. I will tell you that what has happened up until now is that they have given in to the sexual tension. They've had a little bit of a makeout sesh, and neither one of them know what to do with that. So we are back at work. The way their offices are set up, there is a small office that you walk through. That's where Olivia is. And then through Olivia's office is a doorway to the larger office, which is the manager's office, which is where Haley is. So they work in very close proximity to each other, even though they would rather not, or yes, or depending on the day. So Olivia's working at her desk and Haley is not there at the moment, and we will pick up there. This is after they've had a makeout session. They haven't talked to each other about it for a couple days, and they're avoiding each other like the plague. It was Monday now, the first day they'd have to be together all day, and so far they'd managed to do exactly not that. It was almost funny, really, how strategically they'd avoided each other. Olivia finding a reason to go to another part of the resort within 5 minutes of Haley coming into the office. Haley doing the same. With a sigh that was almost more of a groan, Olivia returned to work, tried to focus on the list of emails she should have answered this morning. Now it was afternoon. She'd only been typing for a few moments before she heard cheerful greetings coming from the front desk, a voice she recognized instantly, cutting through the air and coming closer. "Hi, sweetie." Angela Santini breezed into the small outer office, bundled up in her thigh-length down coat and purple knit hat. She held out 2 Tupperware containers. "Are you bringing me lunch, Mama?" Olivia hadn't expected the visit, and her heart warmed. "I went by to see my granddog, and I let him out, and so I thought I'd swing by here on my way back to the office and make sure that you were eating." "You didn't have to do that. Walter will be okay if he doesn't get let out at lunch every single day." "Well, who wants to be cooped up for 8 hours like that, Angela craned her neck to get a better view of the doorway to Haley's office. Olivia shook her head. "She's not there." "No?" "No, she's in the back with maintenance, going over applications." "She was, but she's back," Haley said as she walked through the door. "Mrs. Santini, what a nice surprise." It was like they were old friends, and Olivia watched slightly wide-eyed as her mother held out a hand to Haley and pulled her in for a kiss on the cheek. "It's so good to see you. How are things going? Are you getting the hang of it?" Haley grinned, and Olivia tried not to stare, but she couldn't help herself. That stupid grin was gorgeous. Damn her. "I'm learning, slowly but surely." Haley's gaze shifted to Olivia and held for a beat before she added, "Your daughter's been amazing at helping me out, though. She's a good teacher, very patient. I'm grateful." "She's a catch, my Olivia, that's for sure." She did not just say that. Oh my God. Olivia closed her eyes and willed her mother to leave. She did not. Instead, she held out one of the Tupperware containers toward Haley. "Here you go. I brought you lunch." Haley's face lit up like a child who's just been given a toy she wanted for ages. "You did not have to do that. You are so sweet." "Sunday is sauce day, so there's rigatoni in there with sauce and a couple meatballs that Olivia helped me make." She turned and winked at her daughter. Olivia poked the inside of her cheek with her tongue and said nothing, only because she couldn't think of a thing to say. "It just so happens that I'm starving," Haley said, "so thank you." There was a moment when the 3 of them said nothing, Angela and Haley smiling at each other, Olivia wishing she was anywhere else. Finally, Angela spoke again. "You all ready for Christmas? Where will you go?" Something flew across Haley's face then. Olivia saw it, but only for the briefest second. "Oh," Haley said, and her gaze left Angela's and moved toward the window. "We'll probably just stay here. No big deal. My father isn't a big Christmas guy, and my brothers are in different states, so yeah, I'll just be here." Olivia knew what was coming before the gasp left her mother's lungs. "What?" Angela's face matched her voice in level of horror. "You'll be all alone on Christmas?" Haley shrugged and attempted a smile. "It's totally fine. It won't be the first time." "What?" Angela said again. "No, no way. This is not okay with me." Haley, for the first time since she walked into the office, looked sincerely at Olivia, eyebrows raised, and a silent, "What do I do?" Olivia gave a small shrug and shook her head subtly because there was nothing to be done but come to the Santini's house for Christmas. That was where her mother was going with all the horrified faces, and she knew it. It followed instantly. "You'll come to our house for Christmas Eve dinner, right, Olivia?" And that was how she did it. Olivia had to give kudos to her mother because there was no way she could say anything like, "No, Mama, I'd rather not my direct supervisor who I made out with 3 days ago not come to Christmas at our house." No way at all. Angela Santini was no dummy. "Right," Olivia said, because what else could she say? Angela pulled out her phone, did some scrolling and some tapping, and then handed it over to Haley. "Here, you put your number in and I'll text you the details next week. I live right next door to Olivia. Did you know that?" "I did not know that." Haley shot Olivia a cute little grin, then did as she was told and handed the phone back. "Perfect. Oh, I'm so excited." Angela pocketed her phone. "All right, girls, I need to get back to work. Eat your lunches." As she turned to go, walking past so Haley was between her and Olivia, she shot a wink at her daughter. Damn it. Haley turned to stare at the doorway for a beat before shifting her focus to Olivia and asking, What just happened?" With a sigh, Olivia said, "Congratulations, you've just borne witness to Hurricane Angela. There's nothing you can do, just grab a tree or something and hold on tight."
Yay.
Yay! That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgia. You were really good at that. You need to give yourself more credit.
For sure.
You know what? I do pretty well. I am not Melissa, however, and I don't want to follow.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're every bit as good.
Someone said, "Georgia, would you mind going first?" I was like, "Yes, I would love to go first. Thank you very much."
You're silly. That's so silly.
You're very sweet.
Well, thank you again, Georgia. Okay, Melissa, would you mind doing the same, telling us a little bit about your book, Back to September, and we can start with your reading as well.
Sure, sure. So Back to September is the story of Hannah Shepherd, and she owns a small little bookshop in Providence, Rhode Island, and she's a big fan of the books, but she has a bit of a bias when it comes to the romance genre. She knows it sells well, so she appreciates it, but she feels it's a little simplistic, a little too pie in the sky and unrealistic, and so she's not a big fan herself and doesn't read them. But when the shop's in trouble, she has a big score. She is able to book the top-selling romance novelist in the country to come in and do a signing. And enter Parker Bristow, who pretty much changes her life from that moment forward in September, and their journey begins. So the scene that I'm going to be reading, I've never read a reading to a laptop before, so this is new and exciting for me. But the scene that I'll be reading takes place pretty early in the book, and this is after the signing takes place in the bookshop. And Hannah is surprised when Parker invites her out for dinner, and so dinner is concluding, and they're kind of getting to know each other, and maybe there's a little bit of flirtatiousness happening too. When the bill came, Parker snatched it up without hesitation, and though I didn't want to be overly nosy, I did catch that she'd left an incredibly generous tip. I wondered what that must be like, having money to share with others so freely. Parker looked at me. "I don't know what your situation is tonight, if you have somewhere to be, but do you want to grab a drink at the bar? I'm having a really nice time." I followed her gaze to Harry's well-stocked bar behind me and didn't have to give it much thought. "Let's do it." We picked out 2 stools, and the muscular barkeep tossed 2 coasters in front of us. "What are we drinking?" "Old-fashioned extra cherry," Parker told him without hesitation. "Oh, I glanced around for the menu, but there wasn't one within reach. I wasn't good at this. I wanted to have a signature cocktail the way Parker did, to just toss out there like a boss. Unfortunately, I was more simplistic in my choices. Less cool. I'll take a boring red wine." "You find red wine boring?" Parker asked, and swiveled her stool so she faced me. Our knees staggered. Yeah, she was definitely in my space, and I could feel the warmth from her leg against mine. I swallowed. My everything tightened. I don't know, actually. I don't know why I said that. Probably because your drink sounds more exciting. Oh, it's not. I love wine. Have you been to Napa in spring? I have not been at all, but wine has recently been a new hobby of mine. I'm trying to learn as I go. I tucked my hair behind my ear. She paused and met my gaze. One day, you'll go. She said it like she knew it would happen, and I realized that her personality was infectious because I started to believe it too. Was this how she sold so many books? "Tell me, what does the owner of a bookstore like to read?" Oh, well, that was an answer I didn't have to grapple for. The classics are always a very comfortable place for me. Jane Austen, F. Scott Fitzgerald, even his early stuff. I know. I gave my head a little shake and then began to count off on my fingers. Mary Shelley, Harper Lee. Oh, more recently, Margaret Atwood, like the rest of contemporary society. Oh, Toni Morrison. I was smiling because I love talking about my favorites. It was like old friends. And that's when I realized that I hadn't mentioned her books at all, which I felt really awful about. "I like your work too." It sounded lame now, an afterthought, because it was. She laughed with kindness. "No need to say that. I love my job, and that's thanks enough." She touched her cocktail glass to my wine goblet. "You're really beautiful, you know that? Stunning." She turned back to her drink. I took a moment to swallow my wine, delaying the process because I wasn't clear on what smart, flirtatious, or alluring thing would sound okay leaving my lips. Thank you, was all I managed. I sipped my wine again and set it on the bar. And I don't have a situation. The thing you said earlier, if I had somewhere to be or a situation, I don't. Oh man, why had I said that? Well, I have no idea why I couldn't just be a normal human, cool and collected when I needed to be, laid back other times. Parker's grin started slow and grew. Good to know. I felt a warm shiver move up my back because it was clear she meant it. You can be honest. You've never read a book of mine, have you? I probably have. I read romance. She shook her head, amused. You have not. Read romance? I have. One of mine. Oh, well, I will this week. You definitely don't have to, but can I ask, what do you have against it? She downed her drink and signaled for another round. I don't have anything against it. I paused, wanting to be honest but polite. I think there's an idealism there, however. Ah, a cynic. What? Oh, no, I wouldn't go that far. I just think that relationships are maybe a little less wonderful than romance novels would have us believe. I think they're a nice escape, though. They serve a great purpose. I saw fire ignite in her eyes. This is where you and I differ a little bit, she said. I believe that love in the real world can be just as amazing, just as transformative. Ah, a romantic, I said, mirroring her. Touche. She clinked our glasses as round two arrived. But don't you want it to be real? The longing, the passion, the connection to another human to the point that you just can't breathe without them? Wow. I guess it wouldn't be awful to be wrong about this one. She turned to the bartender and raised her hand. Excuse me, sir? Yeah, sorry. I don't mean to bother you. What is your name? He ambled over and I noticed him subtly flex his biceps as I smothered a smile. Arlo. Arlo. Have you ever been in love? Parker leaned in, chin resting on her palm. His whole face softened. Yeah, I had a girl once. It was like his body sighed in surrender. How did you feel about her? Parker asked. Oh, she was my whole world. Sun, moon, stars, all of it. Parker nodded, engrossed. So you believe in a love conquers all mentality? Nope, he frowned. Fuck that. She cheated on me with my best buddy. It was pretty fucking great while it lasted, though. He walked away to serve another customer after knocking on the bar. Parker laughed. I don't know whose point he just proved. Well, definitely mine, I said. I shook my head. Not a romance novel kind of conclusion. Score one for me. Parker didn't look like she bought it. Oh, I don't know about that. If it hadn't ended badly, it would have definitely been a win in my column. I looked at her. We have columns. Things are getting serious between us. Oh yeah, the wine was definitely loosening me up. That sounded halfway coquettish. Are you flirting with me? Parker narrowed her gaze in a playful manner. Half flirting, I said, and I raised a shoulder which was half of the shoulders I had. Well, damn, what am I supposed to do with that? Halfway reciprocate? I didn't know how to answer, so instead I drank a little more, all the while feeling her watching me. I liked it. I felt alive and playful and courageous, all things I didn't typically feel. Oh yeah, this night had definite possibilities. That's it. That's the reading.
Yay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Of course, my
That
first
was
reading to a
wonderful.
laptop.
I think the laptop appreciated it.
I think so
I
too.
hope so.
Okay, so I will start off with a few questions for you. But this one is actually for both of you. So I know that you two know each other and maybe many of the audience members do, but how did you two meet?
Okay.
Either one of you can answer, whoever would like to tell this
I got
story.
that.
Okay.
Well, my book had been contracted for publication by Bold Strokes, and it wasn't out yet, and I was looking for a place to learn more, to absorb and kind of learn everything that I could. And I just Googled online and found the Golden Crown Literary Society and didn't know it was a thing at all. And I saw that it had a yearly conference, and I was someone who in my job as a theatrical director and as an educator had attended conferences my whole career. So I thought it was great that I found one in this genre. And so I went, and I'm an introverted person. I'm relatively quiet until you get to know me. And so I didn't know a soul, and I just got on a plane and headed to Florida, and I spent most of the conference by myself, which was okay. I went to Disney alone, and I went to all the workshops I could, but I had read many of the authors there. And I wasn't someone who'd ever Googled them, so I didn't know what they looked like until someone would say someone's name. And I was a big fan of Georgia's work, but I didn't meet her first. I was, the last 2 hours of the conference, I was leaving that Saturday because I was going to attend the Tony Awards that next day as an audience member in New York City. And so I wasn't able to stick around. So I had 2 hours left, and someone turned to me and finally introduced themselves. And I was so excited. And they said, "Hi, I'm Rachel Spangler." And I said, "Hi, it's so great to meet you. My name is Melissa." And we got to chatting. And then this one over here ambled on over because they were big buddies. And Rachel introduced me to Georgia, and I think we had a brief chat. We sat together next to the keynote, I think. And then I hopped a plane, and that was it. I was out of there. And then we ran into each other at events for the next year or so before we actually became friends, I would say. Would you agree? Did I get it right? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that was perfect. I think that was perfect. That was, I had seen, the problem with being new to the conferences is that most of us are introverts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that was fairly, I mean, that was what, 2011?
11, yeah.
So while I had been to conferences, it was still something that made me a little nervous. And I am now, but back then I was not the person who would say, "Oh, there's somebody I don't know, let me go up and introduce myself." Now I would do that, but then I didn't. And I wish I had, because I hear her say that she was at all of these things alone, and I'm just like, oh, that's so sad.
I was okay. It was fine. I remember talking to you, and we compared notes, and we were at that downtown Disney the same night. So when yeah.
Wow.
We didn't know each other yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she's right. It was a couple of years, or it was a couple of years, and we like slowly started to get to know each other because we ended up with the same group of friends. And then we just realized we had a lot in common. We started emailing, and friendship was formed.
Yeah, we met in 2011, and in 2013, I would say that's when we were close friends by then. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I didn't know that story, so that's pretty good. Not that I know everything about your lives, I promise. But
well, and then
the
next year, my book finally came out, and we won Goldies in the same category together. So that helps. Yes.
Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's my dog. I'm so sorry.
Well, that was a pretty great story. So thank you both for sharing.
Of course.
About that. So I'm going to delve. Sorry, my pet feeder off because the cats are nearby. Sorry, but I'm going to go ahead and start talking about each of your books. So Georgia, I love this book. And all of them are my favorites, but as you keep bringing them out, I keep saying this one's my favorite. So how did you, just an easy question, how did you come up with the idea of the little fairy houses?
Oh, the fairy houses. There is a fairy trail here in Rochester.
Really?
Yes, it's at one of the parks. My mother and my stepdad take my nephew all the time. And I hear all about it, and he talks all about it, and he loves it, and I had never seen it. So I decided, I want to say this was last winter. I decided I wanted to go for a walk. I mean, sometimes I don't do it often enough, but sometimes if I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling unsettled, I like to walk in the woods. I like to walk in nature. I don't do it nearly enough. I wish I did it more. But I decided I was going to go do this, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning or something. So there was nobody else there. It was like me and snow and the woods, and that was it. And so it's a trail, and then partway in, it becomes the fairy trail. And it's just adorable. And it's like, it's exactly as I describe it in the book, because it's the trees themselves. It's not like they take little houses and they set them out there. They like make them in the trees. They paint like
wow.
in the trees and make them look like doors, and they put little awnings on them, and there's little signs about fairies sleeping and shh, be quiet. And it's just, I think, did I FaceTime you, Melissa, when I was there? Because I was just like,
Yeah.
I wanted to share it with someone. I was all by myself, and I was like, this is
You did. You were
so
showing me the video as you were walking.
He
Yeah.
nodded and smiled like a good friend. But it was
No,
just,
it was cool. It was cool.
it's very cool. And so as soon as I was there and I was walking in it, I thought to myself, I need to put this in a book at some point.
Well, I'm so glad you did. It was so sweet, and I could kind of picture them in my head as you were describing them. So,
Well, and here's an interesting tidbit. I got an email about 3 or 4 months ago from the woman who created the fairy trail. And she read the book.
Wow.
I don't know how, because she talked about how her and her husband created the fairy trail. And she just thanked me for putting it in a book. It was very sweet. I was so surprised. And like, I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, is she going to be mad at me? But she wasn't. She just was very thankful and gracious, and was so happy that it had been put in a book where people could read about it.
Yeah, I think you portrayed them really, like I said, beautifully. I thought it was very sweet. Thanks. So Melissa, this next
Yes.
question is for you. So September is one of my favorite months. I'm secretly hoping that you thought of that, month because it's my birthday month.
I did.
No?
Yeah, I
Oh,
did.
okay. Awesome. I knew it. So I absolutely love that you chose to write about a bookstore owner, and one that was able to be convinced of her unknown love for romance novels. So do you find that you come across the challenge of, quote unquote, justifying the genre as much today as compared to, let's say, when you started writing, or maybe when you started reading romance? Or
I think I didn't realize as a reader the bad rap that romance tends to get, because I don't know that I was paying attention to anything other than my selfish journeys with each story. She just left. Can she do that? Can she just leave?
it might be like a wine emergency. I don't know.
We're gonna let that go. No, I'm kidding. Hey.
Sorry, my dog had to go upstairs.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, anything.
But to jump back to that, yeah, I was just kind of absorbed in what I was doing. But once I kind of came into the industry myself, it's something that I was talking about to others more, and I would see the reaction. One of my very closest friends, still to this day, and this is insulting, and I let it go, but she'll sometimes reference the books I write, like, well, how's the porn going? And I'll be like,
Seriously?
like, yes. And this is someone who doesn't read the genre, so doesn't have a real understanding of what it's all about. So I tend to give her a pass on that, but I find that a lot of people have misconceptions about it, and a lot of people who are familiar with it trivialize it because that the HEA, the happily ever after, is going to come, and so thereby they think that makes it lesser. But I'll tell you right now, in a mystery, there's a body. Oh, spoiled it, and we're going to solve it. So I don't
That's true.
that's specific to just romance. I think whatever genre fiction we're getting into has its norms. So
Definitely.
That's true.
off the
And I'm gonna
soapbox.
I'm gonna steal the whole body concept too now. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Thank
sure.
you.
Mhm.
Let's see. So Georgia, one of the things I really enjoyed about your book is that you wrote quite a bit from the father's perspective.
Yeah.
You've not done that before from what I can recall. So could you tell us a little bit about what that process was like for you, and why it was something that you chose to put in the book?
Yes, I can. I have done it before, but I don't do it often.
Oh, okay.
So no, it's okay. Most of the time in a romance, you want the points of view of either the two main characters, or if it's in first person, like Melissa just wrote, you get that one person's point of view. And sometimes when a third party or a fourth party or whatever end up with their own point of view, people get a little confused by that. But in this story, I felt that it would have been really easy to make Benton flat and to make him one-dimensional. I didn't want him to be, you know, the evil father who doesn't understand his daughter. I wanted him to have a reason for the way that he was with her. And the only way that I could make that clear was to put something in his point of view, because Haley doesn't know. She doesn't understand. So it's not like there's a character in the book who could inform that. So to me, the only way to do it was to give him his own point of view. And it's not a lot, but it's not a little either. So I think it worked okay. It was a debate for a while in my head as to whether or not I should do that. But ultimately, it just ended up the only way to make his journey clear. So I think it worked.
You did that something similar in Zero Visibility, if I remember correctly. You offered points of view to characters outside of the romance, and it worked too. So it's kind of a return, if you will.
Yeah, I don't do it often, and I've done it before where my editor's gone, no.
We don't need this.
But this one seemed to work, so.
Apple.
That is.
Sorry.
What? Oh, I'm a banana.
My dog.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, my dog is named Apple. I'm not searching for one. Sorry. That's her name.
Just so that you guys know, my dog snorkeled at me to go up the stairs because he can't walk up himself. But now he's sitting at the top of the stairs, so he may very well snorkel to come back down. So if I disappear, I'm just grabbing him. I'll be right back.
Oh, that's
no
okay.
problem.
Yeah.
We're just kidding around with you.
And is it okay, Georgia, if I ask if you're there's another dog you had mentioned recently that was feeling ill? Is he on the mend or?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not good,
sorry, I
but-
didn't mean to,
No,
but
it's fine.
okay, all right, just checking in.
He's hanging in there.
Okay, good. Let's see. So, Melissa, I was so excited to find that Hannah, if you don't mind me bringing this up, well, it's in the book, identified as bisexual in this book.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what gave you the inspiration to include this part of Hannah's story, or include this as part of Hannah's story?
Well, I think representation matters. And own voices is a thing too. And as somebody who identifies as bisexual, I'm always looking for myself in books that I read. Like, is there a sliver of me in this character or that character? And I feel like I'm someone who can write to that with some accuracy, because it's the life that I lead. And so I think I've written, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think I've written 3 bisexual characters who were main characters over time. I wrote Sam in Just 3 Words, and Courtney in Strawberry Summer, and Hannah in this particular book, Back to September. And I'm sure that there will be more in the future, because not everybody's the same. Courtney is somebody who doesn't even like the word bisexual, but labels just don't apply to her. And I think that was important to put out there too. I was talking to my niece at the time, who I think she was around 21 or 22, and she was just adamant that she did not want to be labeled. And so that conversation inspired that. But Hannah's okay with it. I'm okay with it. And that it just goes to show that everybody is unique. And I think everyone deserves representation. And so that will continue in my books.
Yeah,
and I'm a bisexual character right now.
Oh, nice. Yay. Yay.
So Melissa will be getting email with questions.
Bring it on. I'm ready.
Well, I know Laura, my wife, and I are very grateful because we're finally seeing some representation out there, and it's refreshing to see, just to kind of see yourselves in the book, at least in that way.
Good.
Yay. All right, so I think this is a great time to ask some of the audience if they have any questions. And we'll kind of go back and forth between me and the audience. So if you all want to kind of chime in and let's see. I'm breaking things. So let me get my, let's see. How about, there should be a little raise, kind of raise your hand, or you can feel free to, yes. So Beth is saying, so feel free to unmute and ask aloud if you have a question, or if you can type one in. Does anybody have a question? I'm sure you do. Come on.
I have a question.
And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself also.
Sorry, this is Ann Etter, and I have a question. I
Hi,
have listened to
Ann.
Georgia read. Hey, guys. I have listened to Georgia read her own book several times, which is awesome. And Melissa, I don't think I've ever heard you narrate any of your own books. Will you ever? Would you ever? And Georgia, would you do it again? Or is it just too painful?
Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. You're right. I haven't. It's not necessarily that I'm not willing. I think it would be interesting. I'm sure there would be a learning curve involved, as you know, Anne. But I'm not sure that the system is set up for it as easily. I know that my publisher finds the folks, and sometimes I have an okay, but I haven't been approached about doing that. And I don't know that I have the equipment to like break it out in my house. It would have to be an investment because so much is narrated from home now. It's a lot more rare, as you know, for a narrator to go into a full-on studio. A lot of it's done from home. But maybe someday, I think it would be fun. I know Georgia can weigh in a little bit more, having done it.
First of all, you would be excellent. You would be fantastic. I narrated starting from scratch because I was approached by Dog Ear Audio, and they asked me if I would be interested in narrating my own book. So they had the studio, the little room and all of the equipment and everything. So all I had to do was show up and read, which makes it sound a lot simpler than it is. It's actually very difficult. But I loved it. It was great. I learned a lot. I learned that I have some acting ability if nobody's looking at me. I learned that I can read a sex scene out loud if nobody's looking at me. I've said this many times, I sweat through 3 t-shirts while I was doing this. I had to keep going and changing because I don't read love scenes out loud. I just don't. But this was part of the process. And so there was a little window in the booth where I could see the audio person doing the, giving me cues and taking care of the equipment. And I taped a piece of paper over it when I got to the sex scene and I couldn't see her. And then I was fine. I would do it. Yes, exactly. I would do it again if approached. I think that there's something to be said about the person who wrote the words actually doing the narrating. And that being said, I have incredible admiration for people who do this for a living because it cannot be easy. It's not easy. I know that. Plus, you have to take the words of somebody else and try to figure, the tone and what are they saying here. And it's a difficult job. It's acting. It's acting is what they're doing. Whether they're by themselves or not, it's still acting and it's grueling. But it was great. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I would totally love to hear you do it again. I think that's one of my favorite audiobooks because listening to the author read, you're right. It doesn't go through someone else. And as someone who does take it through other things,
Right.
I know how hard that is. So yeah.
I think that the hardest part for me was that I found the character of Elena. I found a voice that I really liked for her, and then
it was low, right?
It was low, and then from day to day to day, I had to find it again. And sometimes I would sit there and I was like, and it would take some time to find it again. And when I would have it, I'd be like, okay, let's go, I got this.
Hurry.
Okay. Hello. This is Alice Conley. This is a question for either one of you or both of you. What would you say, or what has been your most difficult book to write, and have you ever had to rewrite several chapters and not be satisfied with it?
You or me?
Both of you. How about
Okay.
both of you?
I was just gonna say who's gonna go first. I have two that I would identify as difficult for different reasons. The first one was my first book, Waiting in the Wings, because when it was accepted for publication, it was with the agreement that certain things would be changed and they were big. And it was almost an entire rewrite for somebody, not an entire rewrite, but the second half was almost completely switched around, and that's a lot for somebody who's never gone through the editing process before. And to this day, I've never had an edit that was that big, and so it felt this is so dramatic, and I was very dramatic about it at the time. It was like, I'm killing part of my soul by doing this. It's your first book, you think it's everything in the world, like this is how it's supposed to go. And I swear, the new document with the edits, I titled it Alternate Universe because I couldn't believe that I was having to depart from my precious story to something different. Like, how could that happen? So that was like rip my soul out difficult. But a technically difficult book to write was the third Seven Shores book, Sparks Like Ours, because it was surfing related. And when I chose the premise of the book, I didn't know much about surfing, and what I didn't know was how much there was to learn about surfing. Like, it's an entirely different language almost, and so the research on that was ridiculous. And so I wanted to like hurl my laptop across the room when I had to learn all of it, but for separate reasons. One was soul, one was brain.
I remember asking her how the research was going, and she was like, "Why did I choose this? Why am I writing this book? There's so much." For me, let's see. Thy Neighbor's Wife, I wrote the entire book in first person, from going back and forth between characters, and there was something that wasn't working. I wasn't sure what it was. And so I took the first 3 chapters and I rewrote them in third person, and it worked really well. And I thought, son of a nutcracker, now I have to rewrite the entire book. And I did. So when people say that Thy Neighbor's Wife is their favorite, I'm like, oh, I hate that book. So much work.
Wait, am I wrong, or did you also change one from second person at one point, or did you keep it? I can't remember. I know that was a struggle.
I've only written in second person when I've written short stories.
Maybe not then. All right.
Must be your other best friend. And then I will say that 96 Hours was difficult because I had to sit through news reports of 9/11 just to like refresh myself on what that felt like, and that was awful. Did you hear that? That's my dog. I have to go get him.
You have to go snorkel.
I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
No, in my defense, I believe it was Snow Globe that you started writing in second person in second tense, and then switched it over to first.
I noticed you said that while I was away. Yes, you are correct.
Well,
Nice
I'm sorry. Could you say that phrase again?
You are correct, Melissa.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
I know, you love that. Don't get used to it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so hi, I'm Amy. I'm actually a 2019 GCLS Writing Academy graduate.
Yay,
So,
Amy.
hi Beth. Hi Beth. Hi Joy. So I actually had a question that brings back to what you were saying, Melissa, about representation and how, as humans, we all like to read about people that are like us. So, for example, when it comes to romance novels, what is a good method to make characters real but keep them from being unlikable? For example, you brought up the subject of bisexuals, and a lot of times, I don't know if you've seen it, but I have in my life, that bisexuals sometimes get a really bad rap in the bad community, right? So let's say you have a character that it's a lesbian character, and she says in the story, "I would never date a bisexual for all of these numbers of reasons." And so she meets one and she talks about her opinion, right? And she's saying this to somebody that's bisexual. And what are some good methods to take the realness of an issue? Because this is actually something I'm struggling with. So there's a reason why I'm asking this question. So the realness of a character and the real bias and represent it without making the reader want to close the book, you know? So there's,
Yeah.
what do you do with, do you get that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a delicate line. How far can we take a character before it's hard to redeem them?
Yes.
I don't think what you're saying is something that you can't redeem a character for. I think that we always want to see a character go on a journey and learn things and change, be a different person at the end of the book than who they were at the beginning. So I would caution you though, and if that particular character was expressing a disdain for a certain group of people, that the character express themselves, but maybe keep the language from going too harsh, and really kind of keep an eye on where that line is, and then follow it up once the scene is written with a sensitivity read. And what I mean by that is sending it to somebody who's been there, maybe sending it to somebody who's bisexual and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And how does it make you feel? And what should I pull back from, or what works and what doesn't? And really be open-minded about taking their feedback.
Okay, that's cool. Because
Didn't you
it's
have
one of those. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, didn't you have a conversation in Just 3 Words where Sam told somebody that it was whatever they said was insulting?
Oh yeah, the other love interest, Hunter. Yeah, they had a good conversation. Mhm.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So if I can just take a moment just to kind of go back to some of the questions that were written in. Michelle Lisper, she asked, essentially, she wanted to know, Melissa, for your book, what made you choose this setting for your book? It was in Providence, Rhode Island. It's actually one of my favorite places. So have you been there, or what was your inspiration for choosing that place?
I'm constantly just enamored with that part of the country and the quaint little towns and the tiny states. You know, I'm from a giant one.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a fascination with somewhere that I would want to spend time researching, because when you choose a place, especially one that you have not, you know, I've been there for a short period, but nothing too extended. You really do have to put in some time getting to know it and researching it. And if you're choosing somewhere that you wouldn't want to be, then that research is tedious. So I think it was selfish of me to say, hey, I'd like to, you know, look at photos of Providence and the water and then the cute little shops. And so you kind of get to be absorbed in all of the wonder of it. And so that was me, like, setting myself up the following year. You know, you kind of pick these things out a year in advance to enjoy myself. And the more I enjoy myself, I find that the more pride I take in my work. And at the end, I can kind of look back and say, you know, evaluate it and feel good about it. And I notice that happens more when I enjoy what I'm doing. So.
Hey, thank you, Melissa.
I don't know if you can hear the drumming above me, but that would be my child stomping around.
For Georgia, I have Rebecca Quirk. She asked, or she says that you mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned recently craving a scone, and while writing your current project. I think you posted that on social media. Yeah. Did one walk in winter lead to any cravings due to all of the mother's food you were talking about?
You know, it always does. It's hard for me because I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm very close. I don't eat a lot of meat, but my mother is Italian, and my mother makes meatballs that are out of this world, and she makes chicken cutlets. Melissa has had the chicken cutlets. She loves those. So anytime I write about Italian food, it's my mom cooking. It's either my mom or my grandma. So yes, there are always cravings involved when I write that stuff. Absolutely. There's no way to write about things that you love. I mean, the thing about Italian food, and I'm saying this because I'm Italian and I'm sure it applies to many other cultures, it's part of life with my family. It's, you know, you don't leave the house hungry. If you do, that's your fault. It's part of all of my memories of my grandmother revolve around food. So anytime I write an Italian character and she's cooking, that comes from my heart and it comes from my family. And so yes, when Angela Santini is making meatballs in her electric frying pan, that's my mother. And she would make them. She makes them. My stepfather's not allowed in the kitchen because he comes by and he eats one every time he goes by. So like he's not allowed. He's not allowed in because she makes a huge thing of them, and then some go in the sauce and some go in the freezer, and everybody gets a bag to take home. And yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
All right, so we'll change the topic a little bit. Though I do kind of like this as much as food sometimes, but Ashley Jensky asks, how long does it typically take, and this is to both of you, I think, how long does it typically take for you guys to write sex scenes? It has to be difficult to create that illustration for readers. And it's kind of
Georgia?
a question that I was going to ask too. I was actually going to ask Georgia because I wanted to see her blush a little bit.
I think I would venture to say that it takes me longer than it takes Melissa because I have a psychological, like, I write pretty fast. I can be cruising right along, and then I wake up in the morning and I'll be like, oh, it's sex scene day. Okay. Word counts go out the window. I don't give myself a word goal on that day because I just write it as it comes to me. And I like writing them. I feel, I mean, you have to also, I don't want to say you have to be in the mood, but you kind of have to be in the mood. And there are times when you're just not. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm digging myself a little hole here. Melissa, what do you
How
think?
about you, Melissa? Yeah.
I'd say a day and a half, usually. And I'd stick with my word count goals. So that's why I'm kind of
Wow.
estimating like how long a scene would be versus like word count wise. I agree. I agree that you do need to feel a little sexy to write sexy. So I often will have two scenes going. I'm a linear writer. So they will be back-to-back scenes. So let's say I'm in the midst of trying to write a sex scene and I'm just not in the right frame of mind, which also means I'm probably doing it a disservice because I'm making it more mechanical than it needs to be. Or I will pause that and jump to the other scene and then come back when the mood is, you know, more conducive to sexy. But word count wise, I'd say it takes a day and a half.
Well, thanks, Melissa. Since you were talking about, Melissa, that you were a linear writer, Christy Punches she got her answer from you, but Georgia, are you more of a linear writer or just chapter by chapter?
I write from page 1 to the end. I have to go in order. It's the way my brain works. If I write out of order, it's going to feel disjointed to me. I am so envious of people who can jump around and write different scenes and then piece them together. I've never been able to do that. In my brain, I don't know the character well enough. I don't know the characters well enough to jump ahead and write a scene. I learn about them as I write about them. So yeah, start to finish. And if I get stuck, I wish I could jump ahead. And Melissa tries to get me to do that. And I haven't been able to do it yet because it feels like something is unfinished. And I have a bit of OCD, I think, and I can't leave it unfinished and go on to the next thing. I have to put some kind of an ending on this scene so that I can move on.
I think it's important to say, though, too, that if you're an intense plotter, Georgia plots more than me, but I don't think she is like crazy outline to every detail. She figures out some of it as she goes. But I think people who are crazy plotters, and not crazy as in loopy crazy, but as in like intense plotters, they're able to write all out of order because they know everything that's going to happen before they ever start writing. And for me, I'm a total pantser. I never know what's going to happen. Georgia knows what's going to happen, but she doesn't maybe know the fine details or the character voice. So I think for people like us, it's harder to jump around. If I will have multiple scenes going, but like I said, they're going to be back to back. So I'm like, I'm in my little nook of the book and I can exist here, but I can't exist here or here. It's just impossible because I don't know it.
Agreed.
Great. And then we have one of the last questions of that have been texted in or chatted in, whatever you want to call it. Anne is very grateful that both you and Melissa have set your some of your books in Philadelphia, and just want to know if that she'll be able to see more of that in the future.
Maybe.
I am not, listen, Ann Gary, I am not opposed to Philadelphia. They have the best sandwiches. They have some good boxers that are from there. So sure, bring on the Philly.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask a couple of questions. Georgia, I'll start with you again. So you, to me, are the queen of the office romance, and I know that you like to write about it. So what are the things that you like most about writing about this topic, or this?
That is an excellent question. I'm honestly not sure what it is about it that draws me. I was not always a writer. I was in corporate America for 17 years. I was a salesperson, which is the totally wrong career for my personality, but that's another. But my clients were corporations and large companies, and so I had a lot of sorry, my dog. I had a lot of higher up people in large companies that were clients, and I would go to their offices and I would visit and you know, show them my wares, and there were a few that were rather attractive. Probably
No.
I know it's hard to believe. So yeah, I just think, and it's hard to talk about this kind of thing in the whole Me Too movement, because you have to be careful, but there's something about that power dynamic too that can be hot if it's done well. I mean, you have to make sure that the person in the higher level is not a predator. I mean, you know, there's become fine lines that you have to be careful of, but there's something about that too that just,
especially if you're showing your wares.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for answering that question. So Melissa, in your book, you mentioned the term imposter syndrome. And I'm so glad that you wove this into the story, because I know it's something that I personally had to deal with during grad school and sometimes at work. Can you tell us more about that and how that influenced many of Parker's decisions in Back to September?
Sure.
I'm giving you all
think
the hard questions.
I think imposter syndrome is way more prevalent than in women, especially, than anyone really says. Because if you find yourself in like, let's say you're out to dinner with a table full of women, if you bring up the concept of imposter syndrome, kind of like what we saw Georgia just do right now, that whole table will start nodding along and saying, oh, that's me. And I think it's so true. And I heard an analogy once where if a coach came into the locker room of a female basketball team and said, you know, some of you guys have really got to step it up. You'll notice all of those players start to go, oh, that's me. I got to step it up. I have to step it up. But if a similar coach walked into the locker room of male players and said the same thing, some of you need to step it up, those guys would be like, yeah, some of you do. Some of you do need to step it up. And I think that's just what our culture fosters, unfortunately, is that we have women who are constantly doubting themselves, me included, all the time. And so I definitely thought it was relatable enough to take the character of Parker and try to illustrate some of the struggles. And with her backstory, of course, she has some darker things as well in terms of abandonment issues, but she just can't quite believe that anyone's there for her. It's left her lonely. It's left her doubting her own success, and it's left her getting in her own way step by step throughout the book. And without it, I'm not sure that the narrative would have made sense. And with this book, I went a little darker than I normally do. We were talking earlier in this chat about it's hard to redeem characters. And there were points when I was writing this book, and I know some readers will agree because I've read some reviews, that I thought, are they going to forgive Parker for her behavior. I don't know that I can bring her back from this, but it's a little more true to life than a typical romance novel. So I wanted to get gritty with this book more than I usually do. And so I did, because I think it's a place we've all been. And imposter syndrome is real, unfortunately. And so hopefully people did identify and did forgive her in the end.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I wanted to, and Melissa, I'm sure you remember this. A few years ago, the two of us were at the RWA conference, which is the Romance Writers of America. So we are in this room. This is the first time I had heard the phrase imposter syndrome. I didn't know what it was. And it was a lunchtime speech, and it was by a psychologist. I don't remember her name now, but she was talking about imposter syndrome, and she explained what it was. And then she asked how many women in the room had experienced that. Now, mind you, this is a room full of probably over 1,000 women, and everybody's hand went up, because it was
Wow.
it's really a woman thing. And it's, you do your job and you're tough and you're good at your job. And in the back of your head, you're like, oh my God, someone is going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing. Someone is going to figure it out at some point. And I go through that with every book I write. I mean, Melissa and I talk to each other all the time. I'm like, I hate this book. This book is awful. And she tells me the same thing. This book is stupid. I mean, we go through this every single time. I have written almost 30 books, but I still think I'm terrible at my job at some point during the process.
I don't want to chime in and take up your time, but I can definitely feel the same. And I'm a nurse, and I'm always questioning, well, am I doing the right things? Did I make the right decision? And am I qualified to be doing this? And I can definitely, the first time I heard the imposter syndrome term was when I was going through my doctorate degree, and we had to get our research projects together. And I'm like, how did I get here? How am I making the right decision here? Like, I mean, I feel like I barely know my job. How am I in this, this program here? So I can definitely feel you. But I do thank you for bringing that up.
If it's okay to go a little bit geek, there's a TED Talk by the founder of Girls Who Code. I think it's Rashma Sujani. That goes into how women or girls are raised differently, and it's like learn to be brave, and it's very powerful, that addresses the imposter syndrome.
Oh, thank you so much, William.
To check that out.
Yeah.
All right, since Amelia was talking, are there any people in the audience that want to chime in with some questions for Georgia and or Melissa?
Sure, go ahead.
Wendy or?
Yeah, this is Wendy.
Oh, hi,
okay,
Wendy.
So, hey, I'm in Texas. I'm big fans of both, so I'm going to fangirl a little bit here. I really appreciate the fact that you guys have a presence on social networks and stuff. I mean, it's fun to get to know a little bit about some of our favorite authors. But my question is about the story. I read in the acknowledgments and stuff that sometimes these editing processes are extremely long and arduous. And how much of this does the story stay the same and just it gets tweaked and all that kind of stuff, or does the story actually change from what you originally started out in the beginning to what it ends up that we're reading?
Well, I think that it can depend on the book itself. Every edit's different. So when you get your edits back, you're anxious to find out, all right, how much work do I have here? Let's hit open. And that's the first real shot you have to hear what your editor's initial thoughts are. For me, the biggest rewrite I ever did was what I talked about earlier, which was that first book. And likely it was because I was very green and still learning. But I think to answer your question specifically, with my books, I don't think the story ever changes that drastically. Sometimes the conflict needs to be beefed up. Sometimes the conflict needs to be tweaked. A scene might need to be added or subtracted to make something make more sense, or we need to flesh out this aspect of the storyline more. But I don't think, for me, there's ever been anything beyond that first book that was, hey, we need to change the course of this narrative. It's about making it better and polishing it up. And I think, Georgia, you haven't had anything too major other than maybe Thy Neighbor's Wife.
That is true. I did have with Flavor of the Month, which comes out in April, I did have to alter the ending a little bit, but it wasn't, you know, nearly changing the story. I've never had the story itself change. As Melissa said, it's about polishing, fixing, tweaking the writing a little bit, making it sound better, making it more visual. It's about making it a better book. I've never had an edit come back. I've had an edit come back where I've had to do a lot of work, but I've never had an edit come back that said, we need to change all of this. I do remember having a global restructure.
I remember that
Maybe
term.
I did. Well, it wasn't about
you
the
talked
story.
about it during a
was
conference.
Yeah, it was. It was
That
one
was
of the
in
puppy.
Chicago. Yeah, we were in Chicago. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Well,
I think
since
my
then-
biggest, I think my biggest recently was First Position. The ending of First Position, now that I'm thinking about it, got shifted around a little bit. But other than that.
And you need to trust your editor too. I mean, if my editor says this ending is not working, we need to fix it, I'm pretty much going to trust her. I know there are a lot of people who are like, I bled on this page, this is how it needs to be, as Melissa was saying earlier with the first book. But you know what? Your editor is your editor for a reason, and they know this stuff. So you can debate a little, you can argue a little bit, but you also have to be smart enough to think about what they're saying and give it an honest, you know, go about it and take a look, and they're right like 99% of the time.
They are. I don't think I've ever rejected a note.
I don't think
I
I
don't
have
think
either.
I ever have. I think I've always just trusted them because I've had good relationships with my editors. Yeah.
I may have cried over one or two, but I've never argued with it.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions, is whether you do you choose your own editors, and then if you did have a disagreement, how you handle that. So, but it sounds like you understand that they get paid for what they do, and they pretty much, you know, that's their job. So I'm sure you want to take what they say not with a grain of salt. So
yeah, I've also had books where I have sent off to my editor and I've been like, because I'm sure it's awful, and it's come back with, okay, this is good, we just have to do a tweak, and I'm like, really? This is amazing. You know, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Before we move on, in regards to editing, about how long does the process take when it's not a smooth edit, when there are several?
Well, I mean, you have a time limit regardless of whether it's a smooth edit or an easy edit or a difficult edit. So it's up to you to, you know, work on your timeline. And, you know, if there's a time when if my edits are due on Friday, then I need to set aside everything I'm doing and I need to get my edits done. It's just a matter of how much work it is. Sometimes they're more work than others, but you generally have a time frame regardless of how many edits you have to work on.
And what is that time frame? What's that been for you?
I'll say, well, and I've had less than that. I've had, I remember that what I was talking about on First Position, that whole restructuring of the ending. I remember getting the email that said, we need to fix the ending. It's going to be some work. We have 2 weeks. Can you do it? I thought, okay, we got to do this. We got to make it happen. So, and I was in grad school at the time, so it was a little insane, but you pull the hours and you make it happen. I think that's a little more rare. I think Georgia's right. I think a month is a little more standard on your initial substantive story edits, and then beyond that, beyond that month, you might move into another week or two of line edits. Right. And then it goes into copy edits, which is another week. And then finally you have some page proof. So there's a lot of hands touching the manuscript, making sure it's what it needs to be.
And I think there comes a point, if you're writing as a career, I think there comes a point where you go from being emotional about your edits to, okay, this is my job. And yeah,
it's not ripping out my soul anymore.
Exactly. Melissa actually witnessed that transition for me, because I dreaded edits, and every time they came, if there were a lot of them, I would just be crushed. And now I get them and I go, all right, I can do this. This is my job.
Yeah.
This is what
it's like you put on your hat. You're like, all right, let's go. Let's do it.
Exactly.
So we are about 15 minutes out until the end of this. So I'm somehow it went by that fast. But I do know we have some other Writing Academy students here, and I know that you both have either taught or mentored the Writing Academy students, and I'm sure the students appreciate you doing so. Could you, as one of the last questions, did either of you participate in any, something similar, writing academies, writing groups? And if so, is that something that you feel helped you? And if not, I guess you don't get to answer this question, but.
Georgia, go ahead.
I don't think I've never really been part of a writing group.
You're in a writing group now.
There you go.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, though. So I taught a short class at a place called Writers and Books in Rochester. I taught a class many years ago about writing lesbian fiction. And I had a class of, I want to say it was 6 women. And the class was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. And after that, we had had so much fun together and we had bonded so much that we decided to keep meeting on our own. And so we did that, and we basically just read to each other. So it's not, I guess it is kind of a writing group. We offer advice to each other, but it's not, it's more just to read, here's what I'm working on.
Like a support group.
It's a support group, yes.
Support group, yeah.
You don't brainstorm. I don't come in there and say, I've got a problem with this book, help me with this. I kind of keep that stuff to myself. Nobody else reads my stuff until I send it to my editor. I mean, I will talk to Melissa about the premise, or, I'm stuck on this thing, and she'll do the same thing with me, but neither one of us read each other's books beforehand. It's just not, I gave it a shot, and it's not for me. It is for a lot of people. It helps a lot of people. But it's just not, for some reason, it's not my thing.
I think that I should have, had I been a part of a writing academy, or had there been some sort of educational mechanism that would have intercepted me before I set out to writing, it would have been a really good thing. But I didn't know enough to seek those things out. I was teaching high school theater at the time, and I had a summer off, and I'd never written anything. I'd never taken a creative writing course. I should have. But I was always, interested in things that had grabbed my attention away. And so just on my summer break, I decided to try to write a book, and I wrote Waiting in the Wings, and it got accepted, and I had to like trial by fire. I had to learn as I went early on, and I had a fantastic editor who taught me some basics, even though I had to scrap a lot of things. And Bold Strokes was very instrumental in holding my hand until I got the hang of it. And I guess they saw something in me through all of those flaws that they wanted to cultivate, and I'm grateful for that. But had I had those things early on, I think I could have avoided a lot of pitfalls. So anyone involved in the Writing Academy, I envy you so much. It's a great organization, and stick with it for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. There is one more Writing Academy student that actually had a question that I did miss earlier, so I apologize. But she wants to know, what advice do you have for those like herself who are just starting out their writing career? And she also says to tell your dogs hi.
We will do that for sure.
Absolutely.
I guess for me, I would say, if possible, write for yourself. Like, nobody is going to read it, because that keeps you out of your own head. That keeps you from assigning judgment to the words on the page. And that gets the creative mechanism in your brain flowing in a forward moving motion, which is what you want. I found that once I was published, that's when it became scary, because I realized that people were reading it and they started trying to think about it through their point of view, and that was a mistake. I would also encourage you to read as much as possible. Some people say they don't like to read in their genre because they write in their genre, and that's always been a puzzle to me, because I think that my best training ground has been taking in the work of others. And I've never been afraid that I was going to absorb what they were doing. I appreciated what they were doing, but I'm always going to make my own mixtape. I'm going to say, oh, that's a really cool thing over there. I would love to adopt that trait, and this is cool over here, but nobody's going to do it like me because there's only me out there. But I can still learn from the others and make my own Melissa mixtape and keep it unique. So I definitely read in my genre, and I encourage you to do the same.
I was going to say the same thing. I hear so many people who say, well, you know, when I'm writing a romance, I can't read romance because they're afraid they're going to pick up somebody else's voice, I guess. But that doesn't make any sense to me either.
How is that even possible? No, you won't.
I don't know.
Be you.
And I want to know what else is out there. I want to see what my colleagues are doing. I want to know what the buzz is. You know, why is this person doing so well? I want to read this. I want to find out for myself what's so amazing about this book. And I want to be able to go to conferences and say, hey, I read your book. It was awesome, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important to know what is out there in your genre. And also, most of somebody is asking you about the ghost in the room of chapter 16 in your book, and that you should address it.
I don't even know. I'm happy to, but what's the question about it? Chapter 16. No, I know what chapter 16 is.
You know what chapter 16 is.
I've seen Twitter. Funny.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay, so I wanted to ask a few speed round questions. I know we have a few minutes left, so
Yes.
Love the
okay.
speed round.
All right. So, what is your favorite warm beverage?
Oh, coffee for sure. Just the
Right.
regular old coffee straight from the Keurig. I like blueberry coffee a lot. Blue Mountain makes it. If you're a coffee person, hit up the Blue Mountain coffee. I'll have 2 to 3 a day.
That was a very complicated answer for a quick question.
Listen, it's important. Blueberry is important.
Tea is my answer.
Okay, good. Okay, let me get this question right. What is the other person's favorite wine? So Melissa, you would know Georgia's and vice versa.
Yeah, give her a good glass of 7 Deadly Zins and she'll be happy.
Melissa will drink Pinot Noir until the cows come home.
Awesome. Okay, yoga pants or fluffy socks?
Yoga pants for sure. This is weird. I just wear shoes all the time, so.
She's such a weirdo. She's so weird. She puts her shoes on first thing in the morning and doesn't take them off until she goes to bed. It's so weird.
Oh wow.
I am shoeless all day long.
I'm the kind of the opposite, or at least flip-flops. I don't, you know. Okay, morning person or a night owl? She is with her shoes.
What was that?
Morning person or night owl?
Morning person.
Morning person Monday through Friday, night owl on the weekend.
There you go. Favorite, I know that you two like Broadway shows and musicals and that you've seen them together. So favorite Broadway show or musical that you've seen together, which one of those have been your favorites?
Together, Moulin Rouge.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. We saw that one this summer. It's really good.
It was.
Take it in again.
All right, so we have time for one more audience question. We have about 7 more minutes left. And so the first one that asks the question gets to ask.
This is Carlene.
Hi,
Carlene.
Hey guys. So this kind of dovetails into some of the other answers you were giving about like your editor and your own voice and things like that. But you two, one of the things I've noticed about both of you is that you are so good at branding. You each have your own very distinct brands, and you could see that just look at your damn book covers, and they're branded. You know, it's like no matter what book you get from Melissa Brayden shows up on that book cover the same way. Same thing with you, Georgia. Your name shows up the same way. And so you brand really well, which means that you have an understanding of marketing and how to market yourselves. So what advice would you give to these new authors who are about to be published in the near future about how to brand and market themselves? Because we're not mainstream. We don't have agents and publicists. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. But you know, what advice would you give to some of these new authors about branding and marketing? Because you're both good at it.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Consistency is key. I think one of the ways you stay consistent is by staying involved, and I'm very, very involved with my branding. I don't just hand it off. I don't have covers created that I just sign off on. I'm very hands-on in the creation of my covers, and so if they're consistently looking like me, it's because I chose them and I scoured and found what I needed. And then I have brilliant cover artists who are very communicative and helpful and listen to what I'm looking for. But also, I think you have to be cognizant of what you put out into the world. I have social media that is designated as Melissa Brayden social media, and you're not going to see me getting too political on social media, not because I don't have strong political beliefs. I do, and sometimes you'll see them bleed through, but I want to keep you in the romance mood. I want to keep you thinking about the work. And so even when I'm posting things from my personal life, they're going to be flavored with my voice. And I don't want to take you to a dark place. And if we're in person, I'll talk to you all day about my frustrations about the world and politics. But probably when I'm reaching out to readers, that's not what I want readers thinking about in that moment. I want them thinking about love and fun and donuts and wine and books. So I'm going to keep the message pretty consistent.
And the swoop of your son's hair.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's got amazing hair.
Because that will also keep you in a good mood. It keeps me in a good mood, at least.
I echo everything that Melissa said, and it's interesting because she said that she's very hands-on with her books. She's also very hands-on with my books. Because I will look for photos, and I mean, I will pick the pictures, but I will pick 4 of them and I'll send them to Melissa and be like, what do you think? And then I too have Ann McMahon, who is my cover artist, and she puts the finishing touches on it. And I'm looking at One Walk in Winter and how much I love this cover. And Melissa helped me pick the photo. And then Ann, you know, she chose the font for my name, which is how it is every time. And she put the little hearts in the snow. And so she adds the finishing touches. It's interesting to me because, as I said earlier, I was in corporate America for nearly 20 years. And Melissa taught high school, and she's a better marketer than I am. And that makes me a little bit angry, but I've learned to listen to her, and I follow the things that she says, things like not being political. Are you raising your hand because you got to make a comment?
I will say that I did win the National Otis Spunkmeyer Scholarship for Entrepreneurship as an 18-year-old, so I did have a little background. Otis Spunkmeyer put me through college. What?
That's awesome.
Of course you did. My point being that she's absolutely right. And I think in social media, you have to, I mean, I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but I want my social media stuff to be a happy place. I want to talk about my dog, and I want to talk about wine, and I want to talk about the weather or the TV shows that I'm watching or the movies that I'm at. And I want to talk about romance. And it's been weird for me the past, couple of years since leaving my marriage to talk about romance, but I want to talk about romance. So I think that that's an important part of the marketing is we have a brand, we have romance writers, and I want people to come to our pages and be happy and have fun and leave with a smile.
Yay. Well, thank you both so much, Georgia and Melissa. Our time somehow flew by. It's been an hour and a half of just amazing talking and just learning about you, getting to hear from the audience, and suffering through my blubbering. So that's fantastic.
There was no blubbering. You were great.
Thanks. But I do encourage all of you, if you're not if you haven't done so already, we meet approximately once a month for this book club. And next month, we will have Kay Aiton's Children of the Stars for the month of March. She's a wonderful author, and I hope you all can join us. So thank you, Melissa and Georgia. It was so great to see you again, and I thank you for taking the time. All right.
Hey, I
Thank you,
have one request. Can we do a screenshot real quick? If everybody on video will smile. Oh, can we get the graphic back too so we could take a screenshot?
Oh, yeah. Joy,
Always
is
the
that
marketer.
okay?
And marketing.
I'm gonna go on social media. You watch.
Everybody on video, smile.
Am I on video? I hope not.
Got it. Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
That was fantastic. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.